Welcome once again to The Blueprint. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, broadcasting live from my constituency office in Lindsay, Ontario, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We ask that you like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. Lots to talk about today. We are going to bring back a good friend of the show, someone I don't think has been on all summer, but has been working hard around his constituency. We're going to talk about the shift in the national opinion polls, the thoughts on the Trudeau government, and the Conservative National Convention coming up this week. So to chat about that and much, much more, let's bring in the one and only Richard Bragdon, the Member of Parliament for Tobique-Mactaquac in the beautiful province of New Brunswick. We appreciate your time and also the amazing name of your riding.
Oh, thank you, Jamie. And I bring you greetings on behalf of the very good people of Tobique-Mactaquac. I must say the most beautiful riding in the entire country. It is an absolutely gorgeous place and filled with good, hardworking, common sense people. And glad and honored to represent them. Thanks, Jamie.
You do a fantastic job. Hopefully I can live up to your standard. Let's talk about the convention. Welcome. Happy summer to you. Let's talk about the convention coming up this week. We've got lots on the agenda to talk about it. And for those that don't know, it really sets the stage in terms of our party and the documents that we use as a starting point as we develop policy and get a guide on what the members feel is important to them and what they are hearing in their communities, bringing it to the national level so that we can champion that further on the national stage. Are you looking forward to the convention, Mr. Bragdon?
Absolutely, Jamie, and I think it does afford all of us as conservatives a chance, obviously, to get together from coast to coast. Many longtime activists and a lot of new people in the party. Obviously, a lot of enthusiastic new members who've joined through the leadership process and under, obviously, the bold vision of our leader, Pierre Poilievre, the Honorable Pierre Poilievre, who's done an amazing job out of the gates as leader and is getting across the country, and the enthusiasm's building. And I think we're going to see a lot of that enthusiasm on full display at the convention in Quebec City. It's going to be a great time.
It is going to be a great time. And I think as we gear up for the next election, which could be coming up really at any time, that's up to Jagmeet Singh and, of course, Justin Trudeau himself. I think some people, including myself, I got to be honest with you, I thought when we wrapped up in June that session, we would be hitting the election coming up in September, that the government would be wanting to get a lot of the bad news that is about to hit, economically speaking, in Canada, especially with people renewing their mortgages coming up. They'd want to get the election out of the way before people really start to notice that the interest rate hikes have and will start to really stretch household budgets. And it doesn't look like we will. But the spring is always a possibility as well.
It is, and I think obviously we have to be ready as conservatives from coast to coast, and that prep time is now, if not before, in getting ready and making sure we're ready to put to Canadians a bold, clear, contrasting alternative vision for the country. And our leader, Pierre, has been doing a great job of that throughout the summer. The ads, as you've seen, and many Canadians have, are crisp, they're good, a lot positive, and showcasing what we want to do for the country, and also who our leader is and the type of person he is and the background he comes from. And I think that ability to identify with ordinary Canadians from coast to coast is connection. It's key. The old adage is many communicate, but few connect. And I find that Pierre has a tremendous ability of connecting with Canadians, and his personal story relates to many Canadians. As you know, he's not a child of privilege. He's someone who was brought up in a very modest, everyday Canadian, I should say, home. And he likes to term it, I like the way he puts it, they're not ordinary Canadians, they're actually quite extraordinary, especially in these times that we're in. That Canadians are able to somehow making ends meet. They're doing the best they can. Some of them are working 2 or 3 jobs to raise their families and put them through school and do the best that they can to provide in a very challenging environment economically. And I believe Pierre's vision is offering something clear to Canadians and hopeful. Yes, he can certainly get in there and mix it up, as we've seen in the House of Commons, and he can certainly counterpunch politically when need be. But I'm very, very thrilled as well to see him putting forward a clear alternate vision to the current government that we have with the NDP Liberal coalition. So it's very important.
I really like what he's doing in terms of, on one hand, also reminding people first and foremost of how we got here. Because I think if people forget, or they look to their the current circumstance and aren't reminded that it was bad Liberal NDP policy that got us here, despite objections from Conservatives, pretty much every step of the way, and we told them. And our leader, Pierre Poilievre, even before he was leader, he was out front telling the world, or trying to tell Canadians, that the path the Liberals were on were going to cause high inflation, high debts and deficits. And we were always pushed back by the media, right? They would, no, you guys don't know what you're talking about, all that stuff. But also, and the second plan is telling Canadians what we're going to do about it, how we're going to fix it. And the convention that we're having, the upcoming election, all of this combined puts information on our party platform that we are able to take forward.
Exactly, Jamie. We've had I believe, and I'm very thankful for the process they've laid out, a very robust process for involving caucus and others in helping develop the policies and the planks of the platform that are going to be going forward. That's obviously still in its developmental stage, but very, very positive moves there. And I think people are appreciating the efforts that all of us are making in getting out across the country to hear their concerns, meet with them, gather in town halls, as it were. And just recently, about 3 weeks ago, actually, the leader was in Prince Edward Island in my region here in Atlantic Canada. And Jamie, he was in a riding called Malpeque. It's right in the heart of Prince Edward Island. It's between the Borden area where the Confederation Bridge basically comes to a shore in Prince Edward Island. It goes across the whole width of the island to the other coast, where it's Cavendish, and that's vacation area, potato country, and it's beautiful in that section of the island. But that area in Malpeque has voted Liberal now for over 40 years in federal elections, very consistently. We went to a small rural community in Malpeque, a little area called New Glasgow, and they have a beautiful setting there. But it's small, it's rural, it's classic Atlantic Canadian. And Pierre and his wife Anna came out into that community, and they had a local Lions Club. The place was packed. It was standing room only in the middle of the summer on a beautiful night. They were out onto the patio deck, down the stairs, out the driveway, cars lined up as far as you can see. And I'm thinking, this is absolutely incredible to get this kind of a turnout for the opposition leader in the middle of summer when they could be out golfing, vacation at the beaches, whatever. Those Islanders were taking time to come and hear from Canada's next Prime Minister. And I believe on election night, I'm quite hopeful as an Atlantic Canadian that blue wave is going to start, yes, in places like Newfoundland and Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And it's going to be encouraging for our friends in Quebec, Ontario, and West to see that wave begin there. And you can tell Atlantic Canadians are tired of this overburdensome, cumbersome level of taxes that they're carrying. We're sick of carbon taxes that keep going up. And as you and I have discussed, Jamie, the carbon tax affects everything. It affects everything that's trucked and shipped. Therefore, it's affecting the cost of heating and eating and driving to and from. And look, quite frankly, we don't have, I don't think, hardly any, maybe a little bit in Halifax, but we don't have much for metro and transit services in all of Atlantic Canada. We have to drive wherever we're going, and we have to take a vehicle to get where we're going. And those bottom line factors like taxes on fuel have devastating consequences to Canadians' pocketbooks, in particular Atlantic Canadians, and they're tired of it. So they're looking for a different direction, and they're grabbing onto the Conservative vision that Pierre's putting forward at this time.
I think I don't want to get too much of a tangent on this, but as you said, the subways and mass transit aren't always available in a lot of rural communities, especially on the island of Prince Edward. Having said that, I think that's also a fundamental difference between Conservatives and kind of those on the left hand of the spectrum, right? They don't mind government providing endless amounts of service, right? Because they believe government knows best. Therefore, government should then make the decisions in everyone's life. Whereas Conservatives, there's nothing wrong with taking the bus or the subway when it's available, the train. Sure. But at the same time, you also want to own something. And that's something that a car allows you to do. You can go where you want, when you want, with whom you want. You don't have to wait for the bus schedule, right? You don't have to wait for the government to tell you you can move. And that's the freedom that I think conservatives like to say. Yes, we need to reduce the amount of pollution. And I think we're doing that with technology and innovation. But at the same time, we can also say we can invest in transit. So those who wish to take that, who feel it's safe and affordable and accessible, can do that. But at the same time, at the end of a 7-year car payment, I'm not saying it's anything special. You can have just 4 wheels and a steering wheel. You actually still own something, and I think that's the fundamental difference. You have something you can sell for parts. You can sell as the car itself. Use it as a field car. It doesn't like it. You have something tangible. And that's something I don't think the left really can understand, because it's all about government control and more government programs.
Jamie, I couldn't agree with you more. I think a very troubling trend amongst left-leaning and further left-leaning governments, it seems, in our time frame, is away from that absolute critical importance of getting that first home, home ownership, free enterprise, free markets, and allowing individuals to make the choices that are best for them and their families. It's putting more and more onus on a bigger and more expansive and more controlling government. And that philosophical difference is becoming very, very clear across the board. And I like the way we're contrasting with that under the leadership of Pierre Poilievre, in that he wants Canada to be one of the, if not the freest country on the planet, where individuals can make their choices that's right for them and their families, and where, yes, you can have the opportunity of getting a home and it not be priced out of reach for everyday Canadians. Yeah, you can have a car and drive it and take it where you want, and not feel this cumbersome guilt that an overbearing government likes to place on people for just doing what they need to do to live and raise a family and go to work and get their kids to sports, etc. So I think that contrast is going to be very, very clear in this next election. And I think Canadians are really, really going to render a clear verdict as we head in that direction. That's our hope, and we got to continue to share the message and make sure that that gets out to as many Canadians as possible. Another area too that I find is resonating in Atlantic Canada in particular, and I know this is across the country, Jamie, is in my travels this summer. And in meeting with farmers, we had John Barlow, our agriculture shadow minister, down through. We met with we went to visit, I think, over 25 farms in my region, and throughout New Brunswick. And of course, he's been to Prince Edward Island several times. We're hearing similar things. And whether it's in agriculture or in natural resources, our region is blessed and our country is blessed with so much of it. We need government in place that has vision for what Canada can become and utilize the potential that we have. The world wants Canadian energy. The world wants Canadian food. How can we get both to international markets and make sure that good Canadian produced goods are getting to those markets? Instead of putting the boot on industry, instead of putting the boot on our farmers and on those who grow our food and literally keep our land, let's encourage them in what they're doing. Let's stand with them, and let's make sure that we're telling the good news that is the Canadian energy news and the Canadian resource sector, as well as Canadian farming sector. I get passionate about this stuff because we hear it every day. I'm in a riding that's resource and agricultural based, and I see how much potential we have. And yet right now our federal government has no vision for either sector other than putting the boot further onto their backs. Anyways, I better stop or
No,
I could keep
well,
going.
well, that's one way to lower prices, right? You add supply, right? Abundance equals peace,
Absolutely.
shortage equals strife. So if you want to lower the price of food, you add more supply to the overall market. You want to do the same to energy. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. You add more of something, the price will go down. Supply and demand, the laws are almost absolute. You mentioned the carbon tax. We have East Coasters starting to really rebel against the ongoing price increases that are crippling though that part of the country. But at the same time, British Columbia, the province with the carbon tax
Absolutely.
in, I believe, the longest in the country, emissions
15
continue to
years
go
or
up.
more.
So at that point, it becomes a revenue stream. It doesn't become an environmental plan. And that is something we clearly point out each and every time. While at the same time, all that really does, as you mentioned, is punish those on the lower to middle of the spectrum, of the income spectrum. So it really stretches the budgets of those regular working class Canadians Well, the rich don't seem to care. It's the same thing like congestion prices that we see in New York City and London, England, right? It basically signals to the rich that we're clearing the streets. Government is clearing the streets for the wealthy to drive downtown in the island of Manhattan. You look at the congestion pricing that's up. At the same time, the regular folks, the working class, can take the subway, take the bus, be stacked and packed, elbows closed, and at the same time driving up the price of the goods that need to be shipped into that area. And it creates a very significant gap. You have the
Absolutely.
uber rich, the ultra rich, and you have the ultra poor. The middle is pretty much gone. And this is what's happening right across the country. This is what the Liberals are doing. And the East Coast is noticing it now that they have to pay the new price set by Ottawa.
Absolutely. And I think people want to return, and I know it's an overused phrase, but they want to return to what is understood as common sense. And they know that this is not doable. Continuing down this road that we're on is leading to all kinds of problems. Whether it be the young couple that's starting out that has a dream of owning their own home, or that young man that's dreaming of getting a car and being able to drive it and go for a cruise, or maybe someday get a truck, something like that that he's dreamed about. Those things are getting more and more remote for more and more Canadians. That should never be the case in a land such as Canada. And we are on top of so much potential. And all of us believe in being responsible, good stewards of the environment. Absolutely. We want to hand on to future generations a cleaner Canada and a cleaner world. That makes sense. But how we get there needs to make sense as well. And we need to do the things that are effective and the things that are genuinely going to make a difference. And you're going to help me with this, Jamie. No Liberal has ever been able to explain this to me yet. How does it do the planet any good to replace Canadian energy and Canadian produced goods and minerals, etc., rare earth minerals, with those produced in nations that have no such thing as an environment commissioner, don't have near the regulation that we do, let alone some places that don't have anywhere near the ethics that we have in Canada, and treat people with equity and pay good wages? How is that better for the planet to replace Canadian resources with those coming from countries that don't have any such regulation and have no intention of meeting any of them? They've never explained that to me. Have they explained it to you yet, Jamie? I've not heard an explanation yet.
I have not heard an explanation, but at the same time, their environmental path doesn't seem to make any sense, right? You
No,
see, we've talked about this many times in the show about what China is doing to Africa. It's basically going into countries that
absolutely.
are usually socialist, communist, maybe a combination or somewhere in the middle of those two. They're basically kissing cousins, anyways, the communism and socialism spectrum. But at the same time, they're building infrastructure. But in exchange, they are getting port access, drilling rights, mineral rights, and they're doing that in places that use child labor. As you mentioned, no environmental standards. You look at what China did, it bought a lithium mine in Argentina. They're basically cornering the markets on these air finger quote green technology or renewables, the materials needed to make those batteries, while at the same time shutting down. Well, not we, the Liberals and the NDP, are shutting down our oil and gas industry, an industry that provides abundance, that provides energy that is reliable, that is safe, that is affordable for the vast majority of Canadians. They're taking that wealth and giving it to countries like China that are
Absolutely.
awful players in the world market, the communist dictatorship in Beijing. That is what we are up against as a country. That is what the Liberals and NDP are pushing it towards, and it almost makes them feel better that they're doing this. And I'm not sure why. It takes away, as you said at the beginning of your answer, common sense.
Yeah, it does, Jamie. And I think when you talk to producers and you talk to the farmers and you talk to those in the energy sector and the resource sector across this country, no one's more vested than they are in ensuring that it's done responsibly. It's their livelihoods that are on the line, and it's the future, for many of them, livelihoods for their families if it's in the farming sector or in the energy sector. Some of these communities are very dependent on these particular industries. Who's going to be more diligent in making sure that they're going to take good care to do things in the most responsible environmental way than those whose livelihoods depend on those very sectors. What we've done is we've eliminated the direct influence and impact that those whose lives are most affected by the decisions that we as governments make. We have removed them so much and taken them out of the equation so that, as it were right now, the current Liberal NDP government are tone deaf to the concerns as well as the solutions that those very sectors are coming up with to some of the challenges we're facing. And the same thing here at the East Coast with our fisheries. When it comes to those who are involved and whose livelihoods and whose families' way of life is dependent upon a vibrant fishery here on the East Coast, who better to talk to than those whose livelihoods depend upon a healthy environment where fish and lobster and other crab can be produced and grow? They're going to take care of that area and make sure it's clean and make sure it's done properly and make sure that they're protecting the future of those stocks, because that's their livelihood at stake. But it seems like this government's become so disconnected from common sense. They're not engaging with those who are most affected by these decisions. And trust me, some of these coastal communities, if the fisheries go down and they're allowed to close certain fisheries, some of those communities will never come back. And the strength of Canada is not just in our big urban centers. Our strength is in those small towns and rural communities across this country that grow our food, produce our goods, and truck and ship and haul our goods that feed our big cities as well as the rest of the world. And that's what I appreciate about Mr. Poilievre. He gets it, and we as a Conservative team, I believe, gets it. We understand the vital role that rural Canadians, small towns, and those in the resource and natural resource and food sectors provide to this country. It's not only about our past, but it's so much about our future and the world's future. The world wants our goods, Jamie. They want Canadian energy. They want Canadian food. And I think if we could hear our producers and our resource sector and the workers in that field, you know what they'd be telling us? Let the farmers farm. Let the producers produce. Let us get back to work and do what we love to do and get off our backs. That's the message I hear from coast to coast. And I know that's the message that our leaders been picking up. And I get really impassioned about this because I see we're so far beneath our potential. And Germany and other countries are coming to us. Please get some LNG. Get us this natural gas. We want your goods. We want to do business with Canada.
There's no business case. There's no business case.
And there's no business case, according to our Prime Minister, who still thinks budgets balance themselves. That's working out really well. So, anyways.
Yeah, tell me about it. We have to get it. Yeah. Believe it or not, that flew by. I think we got to get out of here. We're way over time.
Yeah. Sorry.
Guess get the parting word. No. I loved hearing. You got me fired up there towards the end, almost to the point of incapacitation. So because of that, you get the closing words, my friend.
Well, Jamie, it is a thrill to always to come on and be with you anytime. I enjoy that. It's a great time, and I always enjoy these interviews. And thanks for the opportunity to share from at least here in the East Coast, Atlantic Canada. I want to say there is a change underway, and I believe that we've got a lot of reasons for hope, and that you're going to see, I believe, on election night, a blue wave that's going to come, and it's going to start, yes, in Newfoundland, and it's going to work its way westward, and we're going to see a big change come. I'm very hopeful. And I just want to say this, Jamie, I really feel like we have so much potential as a country, and Canada's best days are yet ahead of us, not behind us. We have a rich history we can learn from and grow from, but we have so much to look forward to in our future if we get the leadership question right. And I think we're on the cusp of that.
I know the only poll that matters is on election day, but I'm loving the numbers I'm seeing out of the East Coast and across the rest of Canada as well. Ontario, we're way out in top. Hopefully that holds, and we appreciate your time, Mr. Bragdon.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right, Richard Bragdon, Member of Parliament for Tobique-Mactaquac in the beautiful province of New Brunswick. And as we pointed out, the poll numbers are holding steady, but we need your help to ensure it remains that way, but also grows at the same time. If you want Pierre Poilievre to be your next Prime Minister, please please comment, please subscribe, please share this program. Also, tell your friends about it because they can download it and listen to it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. You name it, it is out there. We'll continue to bring you new content every single Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, giving you that information that you can tell your friends about it. Until we see you next week, remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.